Brilliant. Tom, thank you for welcoming me into your house.
It's a pleasure, Leon, of course. I'm
you.
sorry we can't be inside.
I know, but the current situation we're in.
Indeed.
And there's been a lot happening at the moment. I mean, for me personally, I'll say over the last 2 years, I've sort of stripped back. So I've been off social media. I've been focused on my family. As you know, I've had 2 children over the last two to 3 years. And I've been really intentional in terms of building relationships with people in my family and people that I share life with. And Tom, you're one of those people. And over the last 2 years, I've been at Croydon Vineyard, and I'll say every month we've committed to meeting up and getting to know each other. And I've come to realise that we have a lot in common.
We do, and it's been a highlight for me, I must say.
Yeah.
Our lunches together, on a Thursday every now and then, or whenever it is, or coffee.
Yeah.
I think we both enjoy football.
Yeah. We're both in fantasy league. Yeah.
I think you're slightly better at it than me, but I'm improving.
Yeah.
And
we both have a love for the people in Croydon.
We do.
And we both believe and follow Jesus.
Yeah.
And obviously it's easier to talk about the similarities than it is to talk about the differences. And obviously in this time, there's a lot of talk around racial injustice.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I've been feeling, I know you've told me you've been feeling a lot of pain in this time as well. So I thought, in terms of relationships, it's like for me, in terms of differences, I can't, in terms of I've got probably a bit more melanin than you, Tom. So it's like for me, in terms of like you being a white person and me being a black person, I've learned that I can't read a book to learn about Tom, because Tom is an individual, and you can't read a book to learn about me because I'm an individual. So for me, I think in this time it's really important for us as friends to talk about things that are hard topics, and for me it's appropriate to have that conversation with you because I've shared life with you, and we are genuine friends.
Yeah, and I think we're trying to film it, aren't we? Because the hope is that as we can talk about things, other people can think, oh, I would have liked to have been able to ask somebody that.
Yeah, sure.
Trying to equip people with a little bit of a help, I guess, if they think it's helpful. So that's why we're doing it on camera.
Yeah, brilliant.
So one thing that I'm really conscious of. We've talked about race a lot, and we've also talked about ourselves.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So it's sort of woven then into all things. But I think is interesting is why do you think, Leon? I've got my ideas, but why do you think that so many people are killed by governments all the time, and there's been a lot of black people in the US who've been killed when they're in police custody?
Yeah, sure.
So what was it about this last, well, it actually unfortunately wasn't the last, but what was it about the George Floyd event, his killing, that sort of sparked it? Just what's happened that's made this such a big thing?
For me, I don't know in terms of like what's made it a big thing, but I think for me personally, just in terms of actually what happened and it being video recorded and you'll be able to see it, a human being being on top of another human being for, regardless of the amount of time it is, just the fact that has happened and it's lead to death, for me, it's heartbreaking. And for me, in terms of like, obviously you can sort of say, oh, that's the US, and that's not happening in the UK. For me personally, that's a lived experience for me in the UK also. So for example, I've got a family friend, a lady called Marcia Rigg, who I grew up with. When I go to my auntie's house, she's always there. Her brother, Sean Rigg, was similar situation where the sense that he was held down for around 8 minutes or so, and he died in police custody. So for me, it's like this is not a far off issue. This is something that personally is close to me, and it's for me as a black man. It's like looking at statistics as well. It's like in terms of like us being a minority, we're like 3%. We're like 3% in Britain. But in terms of the amount of people dying in police custody, it's disproportionate. Where it's I can't remember the statistic, but I think it's about 13%. We're about 13% likely to die in police custody when we're only 3%. And for me, it's, you know, as a youth worker, you know, there's certain things where you say like, snitching is like a code on the street. Like you don't talk. You know, if one of your friends is involved in something, you don't talk. And then it's like, as I see police as a people of authority that are meant to be responsible, meant to be caring for the community. I don't want to make assumptions, but it seems like there's a similar code within the Metropolitan Police as well, where those things happen and police don't testify against other police officers to say that this is wrong. It's like a code where you have to defend your own. And there's been multiple deaths, but there's been no one that's been persecuted. I mean, that's been prosecuted or charged for anything. I don't think there's been one. And it's, for me, it's just it's not a new thing. It's something that's it appears in different form, not just in police, in education, in employment. You see these things in terms of inequality among people of minority all over. And my question is, has there ever been equality for the minority? That's a question that I ask. Has there ever been equality? I don't know what your thoughts on that is, Tom.
Yeah, I think it just shows sort of the. I mean, I must admit, because that's not the first time you told me that you had a family friend who'd gone through a similar experience, and for me that was a real moment of shock to think this is not a one-off event. Yeah. And actually, this has happened. I mean, in South London. Yeah. To a friend of one of my good friends. Yeah. So it begins to be, I don't know, that sense of, you see something on a TV screen, don't you? Or even statistics. I mean, I'm always skeptical about statistics because it removes you from the reality of the thing. And I think for me, what seems to have happened, maybe with the video recording of the killing, it's brought it so much more closer to home for everybody. Sure. And for anybody who's had any experience similar to that, you know, like the "I Can't Breathe" T-shirts, I know it has become a statement of what people have felt. Yeah. And the emotion becomes so strong in that. And it's I think for me, whether that person who feels that is a minority or a majority, the fact that somebody has got that level of pain is something that I just feel deep compassion for, because you know, Jesus felt compassion for anyone who was hurting. And I find that on a screen or a statistic, it's quite easy to, you kind of notice it, but you're a little bit cold in response to it. And I think for me, this last couple of weeks has been a deliberate effort to go beyond that self-protective response. And actually being like, let's really think about this. And as you do, it's like this weight of sadness, I think, that any human being should have to suffer anything like that. Didn't really answer your question. But
No, it's not.
I think something that has been something that I'm interested in is that I don't know at what point in my life I realised that I was a white person in that sense. But it seems to me that there's as somebody who's black, there's a constant reminder. Just tell me about that. I want to understand that more.
Well, I mean, just going on based on what you're saying about, you know, that I can't breathe. It's like, it's symbolic. It's where it's like, for example, I'm British. I was born in Tooting, and I grew up. I think most of my life I grew up in Croydon. But in terms of my ethnicity, I would say I'm Afro-Caribbean. So my dad lives in Jamaica. Jamaica for me is like a second home. But obviously before that, we know the history that we were forced to Jamaica. And I mean, I don't want to go in too much into history, but in terms of like Jamaicans, they're generally seen as people that are outspoken, expressive, confrontational, and in terms of like history, in terms of like in slavery, there was a Jamaicans were seen, basically Jamaicans caused the biggest protest. I'll call it a protest, the biggest uproar within slavery, where they said, we're not going to work, and they wasn't even demanding equality. They were demanding half the wage rate.
Wow.
That's what they were demanding in that time, and they were demanding more freedom. They were demanding human rights, and it wasn't even demanding equality, and that was denied, and there was basically the people were oppressed. And there's, for me, I've sort of experienced, I feel like I kind of join with the people that were in slavery, where it's, when I'm expressive, it's sort of like, oh, he's loud, or he's aggressive. It's always that sort of negative spin on it. Going back to, I can't breathe. It's like I can't be myself. I can't express myself. Where obviously someone like yourself, Tom, it's like you encourage me. You know what? This is who you are. Express yourself. I should embrace who you are. But generally in society, I mean, on occasions, I can't generalize everyone, to be honest. But there are occasions where there's people that, it's like they want to silence your voice, or they label you as being aggressive. When this is just who I am. This is just who I am. And obviously we go from then times when obviously we're not in slavery now. Yeah. Thank God. Yeah. But there still is oppression, where it's like before we was fighting for human rights and a bit of equality, and now we've got to just fighting for equality. So we've not even got to equality yet. Yeah. And that's why I asked the question, like, have we ever had equality? Because and I know it's obviously it's a tough thing to talk about, but I would say that Britain were one of the creators of marginalisation, and it's only been, it's been under 200 years. That's like 3 generations. So for me, it's like there's a lot of things that still need to be undone. So for me, it's that we kind of have to look back to move forward, because if we just ignore everything, then we're kind of ignoring that there's still a problem. So for me, that's, in terms of like, I feel that. So, for example, I'll give an example of one of my friends, because in this time a lot of people are talking. One of my friends, he's got I'm not going to say his name, but he's got a British name, and he's very like ambitious in terms of work, and he's gone to interviews where they've called out his name, and he stood up, and they're looking around to see where this person is.
Right.
And then,
because they don't think he should be. Is he a black guy?
Yes.
They don't think he should be black.
Yeah, this name doesn't look like, it doesn't match, you don't match the description of this name.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's not just that, it's like they say, oh, where are you from?
Yeah.
Imagine being interviewed and they ask you, where are you from? Or was you born here?
Yeah.
Where are you from? And it's like, like, you see my CV before I came here. Like, you've called me to come here. And when I come, you're asking me, where am I from? You don't, what I mean? And this is one example of things that people are going through in this time right now, when we shouldn't.
Yeah, so all of it sort of builds on this sense of there's a resonance with this this feeling that I can't be who I actually am. Yeah,
and it's like it's like a power trip. It's like it's like we're equal. We're all made in the image and likeness of God.
Yeah.
But on a day-to-day basis, is that on our mind? Is that like, love my neighbor as I love myself? Do I, like, for me, a question that I ask myself is like, there's difference, yes, but what is on my heart towards another person? And it's sometimes like we carry things and we don't even know we carry it. And and for me, that's what leads to subconscious biases. We do things, we don't even realize we do it, because there's a heart issue, which I have to deal with, which we all have to deal with, So it's, I think that's that's what I would say on that point.
Yeah, I think for me, I think I feel that it's really hard to change what's in somebody's heart
Sure.
unless they meet with Jesus.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's an awareness role, isn't there? Like and I think what's been really good about the last few weeks is that there seems to be a really clear, more than permission, like invitation for us all to educate ourselves a little bit better about what's really going on inside of people's minds, and what are it's quite a British tradition that you close the front door and nobody really knows what goes on behind that door. And I think some of this, and especially social media, has begun to open that up, and people see a little bit more about, oh, this is what your life is like. And I think I think that's been a really helpful and positive invitation that we've all received in the last couple of weeks. But I think ultimately the change in heart towards somebody else is something that I think only Jesus can.
I do. I agree as well. I agree. I mean, it's even like there's questions, and we spoke about this as well in regards to even like when I was at school, like I have white friends. I still have white friends. They're still my friends that I had at school, and there was privileges that I had. And like, for example, I was a prefect. It wasn't by merit. It was because I was friends with a particular group of people, and they embraced me. Where there might be one or a few people that they embraced me on a friendship level, but they wouldn't embrace me into their family. Whereas, like, if I dated one of their sister or whoever from their family, then that would be shunned, you know. And it's like, for me, it's important for us to sort of go past the service. When we talk about the heart, you have to kind of go past the service level. It's like, you know, you can talk to people, but it's like, will I devote myself to you? Will I, you know, get under you? You know, will I, you know what I mean? Will I lay down my life for you? You know what I mean? For me, it's like, for me, that's the direction that I would love for us as people to move forward. And there's one thing that you said recently that, you know, it's kind of showed me that, you know, Tom, your heart is in the right place when you said that you have a black mentor.
Freddie.
And for me, Tom, what was the thought process, or why did you like choose to have a black mentor?
Well, I think I feel like I have so much to learn all the time. I love learning. I love one thing I love about Croydon is that there's many people from many different nations. So what's totally normal for somebody is totally new for me. And you know, an obvious thing about that is food, right? So you go and somebody's like, oh, this is just what we eat all the time. You think, what? I've never eaten that in my life. Like, what is this? When we've done the international days and somebody brought like goat curry, and I'll be like goat curry? How do I even eat this? Or some fish dish that some of the Sri Lankan guys have brought. What, you know, you're like looking at thinking, what is this? I love those moments. I love those moments. I feel like it's an invitation to grow and develop. And so I've had quite a few really fantastic mentors in my life, people who've older, further on, who've taken an interest in me. But I've never had a person who's black who's done that. And so many reasons why that is. But I decided I was going to actively go out my way to try and cultivate a friendship with somebody who was from the black community, so that I could then ask them all kinds of questions and get their steer. And I mean, on one level, it's Freddie, and on one level, I see Freddie as a black mentor, and on another level, I just see Freddie as he's a guy I just ask questions. Because he's just really wise. And the fact that he is black, or what, I mean, really, he's just a really encouraging, good guy to be around. So I don't want to overplay. Of course. The kind of, because I think that's one of the challenges in this moment. We want to recognise the difference, and there is a different lived experience. You know.
But we also want to recognise the oneness. But we also want
to actually focus on the fact that once you get past. Once you build into a bit of relationship,
you realise that you're
Leon.
You're
Leon, and hopefully I'm Tom, and you know, as there are others, and to me, you don't. To me, I don't know if this is how you feel about this, but you don't represent British-born people of Jamaican descent. You're Leon.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I might meet somebody else who's British-born of Jamaican descent,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they would be them, and they'd be. And,
Yeah.
and I do know those people like that, and I think for me that's what I'm hungry for. That's what I feel is strength. That's what I feel like is. That's what you're saying. It's relationship, isn't it? It's like, I'm going to be committed to you.
Yeah, as a person. Yeah.
And you might feel like you are totally like all other people like you, or totally different. Maybe you feel like a total outsider.
Sure.
From the particular community of black people that you live in. It doesn't make any difference to me.
Yeah.
Like, I want to value you and be there with you. I don't think I grew up with a real kind of conscious. This is what it is to be white.
Yeah.
I think we've often talked. Leslie and I talk about this quite a lot. She's from American heritage and Native American.
Yeah.
And you watch shows on TV and you realise that certain cultures are very strong on this is what it means to be this kind of person.
Yeah.
I love those documentaries. But for me, I don't think there was anything like this is really what it means to be a white person.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean that's not really. It's not really put on. It's not really. Yeah, that's not. You just you are who you are basically.
So the main, you know, if there was anything, it's like we were from the north, we're from Yorkshire, and we were living in the south. So you know, the joke was people in the south are soft, and you know, are obsessed with riches, and people in the north are more kind of common, and we don't spend, you know, waste money, and you know, some of it was like that, and. But I wasn't really conscious of that, and maybe none of us are conscious of that happening to us as kids. But I can't remember where I was going with this.
No, I'm saying about it's about, you know, obviously there is difference, but
there is difference.
But you have to remember.
What I was going to say, I think I don't feel like I'm particularly like lots of people who look like me.
Yeah.
I think if maybe you.
No, I do. I
disagree, but I think all of us. I think it's value in seeing everyone as individual.
Yeah. No, I think I do relate to it in the sense when I was growing up, my parents never taught me about, okay, you're black and they're white and there's division, and they sort of just, you know, like, you know, make sure you've got good friends, you know, just general principles, and I've sort of found my way within that, and I'm really thankful for my parents for, you know, just giving me principles and not sort of putting you know, these stigmas on me. But I think as I grew up and I sort of became more independent, I think that's when I saw the divide. Yeah. I think, and that's when I became more conscious that I'm a black man living in Britain. That's I think for me. Yeah.
And I think that's something that I've never had to experience really. When I came to Croydon, it was the first time really that I was very conscious of people who were clearly from a different background from me. Yeah. And I don't know why, because I remember kids at school who are from all kinds of different nations, or, you know, different skin pigmentations and all that. But in Croydon, I think you come across people who speak a language on the street and you don't know the language. Yeah. And there's a certain, you know, I love it now, but I remember when I first saw people wearing African dress walking down the street, I was a bit like, it was just surprising. It wasn't the norm. Yeah. It was surprising to me. Yeah. And large populations of people from all different places. And I think that was the first time I really realised I need to educate myself, because people have had very, very different life experiences and expectations of the future. It's not just their past; it's what's going to happen in the future is also really different. Yeah. I think. And I love it that God's chosen to draw many nations into our church. I think, you know, some of my closest friends now were not born in the UK and had a childhood so totally different from mine. And I love that. I love that. But something that I want to ask you about, because I think as we learn about people from other cultures, you do realise that people have been treated badly.
Yeah, been abused.
They have been treated badly because of the colour of their skin, or because of the accent they have, or because of even the fragrance of their body, or
Yeah.
they've just been treated badly, and I think we want to. You want to be able to do something about that, don't you?
Yeah.
You want to be able to do something about that, and not just. You want to mourn with those who mourn, and recognise that. And I think there's a lot of benefit in that. Jesus can bring so much healing to people.
Yeah.
So much freedom from past hurt, and ability to forgive, and to kind of feel clean from the offence that was done against them. But you also want to see things change, don't you?
Yeah.
And that's what I feel like we're in a moment where we can try and push into.
I do feel that God is moving in this time. I do feel that. And I mean, in terms of like your question is in terms of like what can we do? What I would say is that I believe my identity is in Christ, and what Jesus did when he died on the cross, for me, yes, he died for our sins, and he brings freedom in a sense of spirit, like in terms of our spiritual, like our heart, but he also died for racial reconciliation. And I'll go back and then I'll go forward, because we spoke about slavery as well. In like when I read the Bible, it in that time there was slavery, and that was normal. And in a time where slaves were
different kind of slavery from what we had across there.
Yes.
I think the transatlantic slave trade was
obviously that's afterwards.
Unbelievably wicked and brutal compared to the Roman form of slavery, which was a little bit, from what we know of the evidence, was far more likely to see a slave treated well.
Yes, but going in terms of like having a lens, a biblical lens.
Yeah.
Like for example, I think it's Ephesians 6:9, where it says, "Masters, don't mistreat your slaves."
That's right.
So it's like, for me, in the Bible, it safeguards people in those positions. So it's like, now we're saying Black Lives Matter, or some people are saying Black Lives Matter. In the Bible, when people were going through something in a different form, he was saying, treat people fairly.
Well,
that was, you know what I mean?
In Philemon, he goes further than that.
Yeah.
Because Paul writes to Philemon, who was probably a household owner, one of the people who worked in his house, slave, who he probably owned as part of his property. That's the way they did it back then. Had run away, and become a Christian when he'd run away. So this is a crime the guy's committed. And he already was somebody who was in that position of slavery or bondsmanship, whatever the word we choose. And then Paul says to Philemon, "I want you to treat him like your brother."
Yes.
Treat him like you would treat me.
Like a family member.
Which is so shocking.
In that day and age.
In any day and age.
But I mean contextually,
if you said to any boss, even in our workplaces now, every employee, I want you to treat them not only just like they're, don't just honour them, don't just show them, treat them like your brother. In fact, Paul says, treat them like you would treat me. So Paul was the guy who was like the mentor of Philemon. Or Philemon, however people say. It's just the call to respect people and to love them is so strong in the New Testament.
And even in the Old Testament, in terms of like you talked about the Atlantic trade, it's clear in Exodus where it says, "Do not kidnap people." Do not, those like even within the law, it says, "Do not kidnap." Do not. So it's and even pointing towards Jesus. Obviously, they followed Jesus. Jesus came for people that were marginalized. If you like look at the disciples, for example, Matthew, he was a tax collector. They were known for abusing the innocent, and he came and he transformed his life. And then you've got people like obviously like Mary Magdalene as well, who women in that time were dehumanized, treated like animals or objects, and he stood up for her. And it's like, for me, like this is at the heart. This is at Jesus's heart. Like he came for the poor. He came for the marginalized, and that's at his heart. And even you're talking about Paul, and he said that there's no longer Greek or Jew, there's no longer slave or free. We're all one in Christ. And for me, like true, like pure racial reconciliation is for me, it's only found in Jesus. And for me, that's that's something that we should all be working towards. Even as like Tom yourself, a church leader, it's for me it's been such a blessing in this time for you to stand up and say, not only to make a statement, but to also, like, you know, show your presence, show your face, say, listen, we do not condone this, and this is, and not only this is what we don't condone, but this is what we stand for.
Yeah. I think the thing that I found wrestled with a lot, and you know, and as I said, I just tried to be really honest. I just really felt the Lord said, you know, there's more hope for a fool than who's hasty to speak.
Yes.
And what I was wrestling with was just the desire to be to stand for the positive call of Jesus, which ultimately calls us to repent towards something.
Yes. And
I felt like I wanted to really be clear, what are we repenting towards? If we need to repent, what are we now going to do?
Yeah, sure.
And I think the truth of the New Testament is so staggeringly beautiful, as you say, like racial integration, you know, kind of loving one another. I mean, they had to fight for it.
Of course,
they had to fight for it. It wasn't easy.
Good, you have to fight for it.
But the vision is so beautiful and amazing, and I wanted to have time to think through, and then we put something out about that, and we called it fusion culture, and whether that's the most helpful language or not, I think, but it tries to honour the fact that different people bring different things, and yet we must seek to draw them together. And
can you expand a bit more on that, Tom, in terms of like fusion culture, what that looks like in?
I guess it's based off, the idea came off, you know, restaurants. It would be like, often there'll be somebody who's, I saw something on TV, there was a guy who was Chinese Italian, so his dad was Italian and his mum was Chinese or something like that. So he grew up with his dad cooking Italian food and his mum cooking Chinese food. And then he was like, I want to bring these things together, and so he created fusion culture of Italian Chinese. And he took what he thought was the best of this and the best of that, and he kind of found a way to put them together in one dish. So that's what we mean by that, really. You know, that I think I personally have found that especially people who've grown up in Africa, who've come to the UK, but generally most black people are way better prayers than people who grew up than I am. So when there's an invitation to pray, I don't want to name check too many people, but I can name check Endurance. When there's an invitation to pray and Endurance starts to pray, I'm like,
you feel
there's something going on here.
You're like, wow.
What? And I'm like, I need to humble myself and realize that what I thought was really good prayer is nothing compared to Endurance's average prayer. So like, I want to fuse what she brings there. Now, I can't speak on her behalf, but I believe in the Lord that I bring something that Endurance would be like, oh, what Tom brings there is beyond what I would have brought there. And so that, you know, the biblical language is the Holy Spirit puts different gifts in different people, and we draw them together for the mutual edification. But it's trying to just bring a twist on that, using the language from mainstream society about fusion. That's what we're trying to get at.
And I think it's, you know, it's in the sense of, I know obviously you're bigging up Endurance, but I think for me it's, you know, it's not even that, you know, your prayer is better than my prayer. It's that, you know,
but hers are.
But it's like, for me, it's when I'm praying and you're praying, or when you bring your contribution and I bring my contribution, it's just better. Like when there's difference, it's better. And I think for me, it's like, and also as well, I might like, for me, my gran who introduced me to faith, she went to a predominantly black church, which I love. And for me, in terms of being mindful, there's a reason, obviously we're kind of going back in terms of like the reasoning, but I'm mindful that my gran was in a particular church because there was segregation, and that was, and even like for myself, I've experienced that for myself, and even for my wife. It's in a world where your voice is being silenced. We found that church it's like a safe place where, you know, you people like for example, when I first became a Christian, I went to a church in South Norwood, and I didn't have a clue about Christianity. I didn't even know who Moses was, and people got alongside me. They taught me like who God was, and they just said, express yourself. Like, don't worry about who's next to you. Don't, like, if you want to jump, if you want to be on the floor, just express yourself. And it's a bit similar to my experience as a child. Like, it was so beautiful. And then as I kind of grew and you kind of learn more politics, and it just sort of things got, and things just got a bit mucky. And I think in my spiritual walk, there was a time where I was sort of off church, not off Jesus, but I was sort of off church, because it's like I read the Bible and I see the beauty of God, and then it's like, you just kind of, as people, including myself, like in terms of like us mistreating each other, you just sort of see that, like it's just something's not right, and obviously we live in a fallen world, and until we meet the Lord, we're gonna have to endure. But I'm really mindful that, for myself, including a lot of black churches, that it's a safe place, and I may not expect you to. I know you're hearing what you're saying, and you do have a better understanding, but because you haven't lived it, you may not fully understand what I'm saying is what I'm saying. But I'm mindful of that. But I'm also mindful of, regardless of your race, your background, as a Christian first and foremost, we should strive for a division-less church, and we should strive for a church where there is multicultures, because that's what it's like in heaven. And like we know the Lord's Prayer, where it says, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. It's like, for me, like when I pray that prayer, that includes locally my church. I want the same way I want to praise, like I want my church to look like my community, because when I go to heaven, that's what it's going to look like. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So for me, and to be honest, and you said it to me as well, it's easier to be friends or to be around people that are similar to you. But we are people of the kingdom.
That's right.
And our loyalty is to God above all things.
Absolutely.
So that's,
and we trust him. We trust him that. Paul had no end of trouble, right? I've been looking at Romans loads, and he in a book which is massively dense, he has to give about 4 chapters to don't fight about this. Don't fight about that. And Corinthians is even worse. 1 Corinthians, like the whole thing. So it's not easy, but I think iron sharpens irons in the Bible for a reason, right? There is a richness that comes. And I think that would be my encouragement to people. I've found I've tried to ask you awkward questions and just let you and
please,
listen.
you can ask me.
And listen to the answers. And not just jump into whatever. I feel a worry I have is that a lot of white people will listen to what black people are saying, and they'll go, but.
And I think for me that's
and
the problem.
I think for me the thing that would be great. Of course we can't change what people outside the kingdom do. We can't change the world. We have no power for that. But if you're in Christ, and you start to find yourself saying but in response to somebody of a different culture's explanation of their experiences, I think you just need to stop that sentence there. And just like rewind and be like, let me not say but, let me just respect that this person maybe does know what they're talking about. And maybe I can humble myself before them and learn from them. And I think that's a really great thing we can do as church. And I do want to see things improve. Absolutely improve.
And we, even through this conversation, I believe that people will hear it and things will improve. And we have a responsibility as individuals to be a salt and a light. And God is with us, and for me as well, one thing that God's been speaking to me about is not to idolize people, to idolize God. And like one of my friends, he lives in Bristol, one of my good friends, and he saw what happened with the statue. And it's
this is the I've forgotten the guy's name, Colston or something like that, who was a guy who made loads of money from the slave trade. And I think the defense of him that some people give is that he also did other stuff, but the reality was that it's very challenging to see how he made his riches other than through just total racist exploitation of other people.
Yeah.
So the statue was thrown into the river, right?
Yeah, and it's been retrieved. I don't know what's happened. I heard it's going to go into a museum, but that's another conversation. I
smile when I'm telling that story. I'm just trying to leave it. But
I think what God has been saying to me is that as a Christian, sometimes we can be living life, and God might be working on us in certain areas, but we can have blind spots.
Yeah.
And I'll give an example. Something that, like for example, Jonathan Edwards. In the Christian world, he's known for doing a lot of great things, but he also had slaves.
Yeah.
And it's like, with that statue, it's like he was done a lot of good things in the community, but there was a blind spot.
Yeah.
And it's like, for me, it's like we can have a tendency to idolize people, even within church, in workplace, wherever. We idolize people, when really we should be idolizing God. And for me, it's like, is there a blind spot in my life? Is there a blind spot somewhere? Because even there's other people where they might be doing great things, but they might be unfaithful to their wife. And for me, it's like, is there any blind spots in my life? So I think for me, that's something that God has been speaking to me about personally.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the richness. Maybe that comes back to what I was saying about prayer. Like, it was a blind spot that actually there was riches in prayer that I wasn't experiencing.
Yeah.
I think that's part of that. I think for me, I like to think about things.
Yeah.
And something that I feel is happening, and I think this is the Lord speaking to me, but I hesitate to really say this is definitely.
Yeah, go for it.
I think that I just realised we're in a moment where grand gestures are all people want.
Okay.
They just want like a big visual, emotive moment that is like, boom, done.
Yes.
And there's obviously, there's moments where God does grand gestures, when he builds the temple and he fills it with smoke or fire falls down. That's a pretty grand gesture. So I'm not against grand gestures.
God can do what he wants.
He can do what he wants. So I think that's partly it's our yearning for the truly divine, that yearning for an amazing visual, sensual image that's like highly emotive. But I think we've loved that so much that the simple act of just building a friendship with somebody, just day in, day out, humbling yourself before the Lord and asking Him to teach you, is something that we've slightly lost. And it's hard. I feel like my yearning for this time is that with the grand gestures, that it's really, they just point people to these simple, ongoing acts that aren't grand and aren't going to be something you can tweet or Instagram about. Yeah. But actually, that's where the real wins are made.
Yeah.
Once a month, let's get together for lunch.
Yeah. Let's
sit and talk.
Let's share life with each other.
Things. That's what I think Paul calls people to. Jesus modelled. I mean, he lived with those guys for 3 years. Yeah. He didn't do a grand gesture. He sat and lived with the disciples and he says over and over again, do I have to put up with you guys for so long? Yeah. So I think that's what I feel like the Lord's calling us to. Like, let's devote ourselves to one another, and let's do it in season and out of season. Yeah. And let's stand up for the oppressed. And when we see somebody who's hurt, let's ask them about it and listen.
Yeah, let's get alongside them.
Not come up with a but. And if we can see somebody who is open to us saying, was that an assumption you were making? I think that's a good thing for us to do. Yeah. In our workplaces, in our families, with all humility, but to be like, is that an assumption that you're making there about that person? Like, just help me understand what you're thinking when you're saying that.
I think it's important. I think even for me, there's two things from what you were saying. The first thing I got was that for me, sometimes like I can make a judgment without clarity as well. It's not, in terms of people can make assumptions about others, but I can also. Of
course, we all do.
Yeah, and for me, it's like, I can't basically, okay, I feel this way, so you're racist. Do you know what I mean? That's not, for me, that's not healthy. Yeah. For me, it's important for whoever you are to think, to process things. And sometimes you might need to think and pause and then, yes, what happened is true, and I'm going to confront it. And it's, as you said, sometimes you have to sort of stop and not say things in haste, because that is foolish. But there's also a time to act as well, and it's
There is a
obviously
time,
we need wisdom.
And this is
Yeah.
part of the beauty of church, right? Because you can prompt me to act, and I can prompt you to be like, oh, hold on, and you can prompt me to hold on, and there's nothing, I'm going to act, and I can prompt you to act, and
it's true, we come
I think
together.
that's the beauty of
And the
church.
second book, Tom, was when you was talking about Jesus. In terms of, like he endured. That's what the Bible says. Love endures.
Yeah.
But on top of that, like he prayed. Well, he protected. He's in. I think it's in John 17. I think it's in, and Jesus said that he prayed that they would be one. He protected them, but he said, I also pray for the people that you share the message with, which is us.
Yeah.
And he's prayed that we would be one.
Yeah.
Like Jesus actually prayed for us, that we would be one.
Yeah.
And it's like, for me, it's powerful.
It is so powerful, and that's what I want to give my life to. Isn't it you? It's like, let's do this.
Yeah. For me, that's pure. That's pure. And Tom, you in one of your preaches, you spoke about like conceit and the challenge.
Yeah.
That stuck with me. I mean, Tom, can you kind of break that down?
I think I personally think that pride is probably the worst sin. I know we don't necessarily have kind of grading of sin, but over and over again the New Testament will say, like, God opposes the proud and gives grace to the humble. Like, he opposes the proud, and I think he doesn't say he opposes that many people, God, but he does oppose the proud.
The proud, yeah.
And conceit is pride, and conceit expressed in all relationship is where you say I will not love you. You're not worthy of my love.
Sure.
You're not worthy of me making the effort to get to know you and to pursue you. Now, there's all kinds of situations where practically you can't do that. So you can take all the guilt that might put on you, but in your heart, there's moments where you're like, Leon, he's going on about this black stuff. I'm not interested. To be honest, I'm just going to switch off. Now, to me, I'm like, whoa, you need to be really careful, because that feels like if that isn't conceit, it's extremely close to it.
Yes.
It probably is conceit, which is pride. Yes. And if you pursue in pride, God will oppose you.
Yeah.
And we don't want that. That breaks down church. It's horrible. Titus says, you warn a divisive person once, warn them twice. If they still don't listen, get rid of them. Kick them out. Yeah. How harsh is that?
Yeah, it's very harsh.
Conceit is poison in the Christian life. Pride is poison. But challenge is where you want to build a friendship or a relationship with somebody. You want to co-labor with them, but it's hard. And that could be anything from they don't speak your language. We've had loads of guys who don't speak English. You want to do something with them. It's a challenge to do anything, because sign language and odd words, up to the other kind of, you speak totally the same language, but you see things differently. Yeah. And, somebody, often worship was a big one, but how you use the Bible, what you do in a small group, what it means even to get together and be friends. People have different understandings of those things. Yes. And so there will be quite natural to have a challenge of one another, like, oh, Leon, I thought Leon was gonna pay this time. He didn't pay. And I could go home and I could be like, well, that's just a challenge in this relationship. Yes. So why don't we keep pursuing the relationship and seek to overcome the challenge? So those moments where I think, the point I was trying to make is when those moments kick up and you're like, I'm finding this hard, I'm not really engaging with, this isn't feeling wonderful to me. Yes. It's like, actually, to choose to continue in that relationship, to choose to continue to invest, is a sign of humility, which the Lord celebrates. Yes. He gives grace to you when you do that.
You're humbling yourself in your
weakness. Grace to the humble.
Yeah.
And so I think you see abundant grace in a church or any relationship when people actively choose to push through challenges in relationships and to stick with one another. Yeah, and
that applies to all things.
All situations.
Yeah, all situations. Yeah, and I think, is there anything else you want to share, Tom? I think for me, another thing that God has been sharing with me, and I've said it to a few of my friends as well, is that maybe this more applies to people of minority, like Black Asian communities, that there's things that we've experienced and we haven't brought it to God, and we've kind of carried it. And even I'll take it even further, Tom. Okay, let's just break it down. Even within like, to say, like the white community, there's division.
Yeah. Oh,
you might have a gypsy. You might have someone else. Do you know what I mean?
You could. I mean, we see so many people. They haven't spoken to their brother for years.
Yeah.
They grew up in the same household. They've got the same bloodline, but massive division.
Yeah, and that's pride.
Yeah.
Or you got, just say, maybe someone from Pakistan and someone from India, and there's conflict.
Yeah.
Or you've got even complex, like when I was growing up, it was like sort of Caribbean and African. It's getting better.
Really?
Yeah, there's sort of a divide, and that's probably another conversation of why that is.
Yeah.
But there is, I mean, some people might call it self-hate, but there are divides within different groups, and it all goes back to you saying about pride, and you have to challenge those things. And going back to my main thing, what God has been saying to me is that, and this applies to us both as well, is that there might be things that we're carrying that we haven't brought to God. We haven't received healing. We haven't received God's compassion and forgiveness and freedom. Yeah. And that's having an effect on how we treat the people that are around us as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think going slightly out on a limb.
Go for it, Tom. That's it. Get it out. Get it out. Throw the bomb.
Some of the things I felt a little bit uncomfortable with some of what's happened. I love so much of what God's doing in these last few weeks. But when anger is the fuel for action, I think then you want to then use that anger and 100%. Take that to the Lord.
Yes.
And find Him actually to give you to redeem it, and the action can continue. Yes. But it's an action now based on love. Yes. And I think some of the stuff we're seeing, as with all human reaction to anything, and there'll be a mix of it, and some of it is genuine love-based action. Some of it feels like if let's go to the Lord, receive real healing. Yeah. Because actually that won't reduce the effectiveness of what's done. It will increase the effectiveness of what can come, because human anger achieves no righteousness. I think the Bible says. But we also know that there is a godly anger. There's a righteous. That's why I say. So I think I've heard a quote of Augustine said that the twin daughters of injustice are anger and. I can't remember what the other one was. Yeah. I shouldn't have started the quote if I couldn't finish it.
People can do their research.
Because Jesus has anger. He shows zeal, right, in the temple.
Yeah, God gets angry. God doesn't like sin. God doesn't like injustice.
That's why I tried to phrase it. It's not saying that you should feel angry about those things. And that should provoke you to some action. Yes. But then don't let the anger be the only fuel that's in the tank, because that so quickly can become a difficult thing, and we want love to fuel our action. Yeah, and I think that's what it is that for me that the anger should lead to love. Yeah, the anger should fuel, like it should lead to love. It should lead to justice and compassion. But as you said, I think you're basically kind of saying is that they're very close. Like the ungodly anger and the godly, it's like difficult to tell the difference.
It's a thin line, and for us as Christians or as people, for us we have to be very intentional and conscious that my anger can lead towards bitterness and rage and just loving myself, selfishness, and all the other wicked things that lead to destruction, or it can lead to love and justice and compassion. But with that side, we know that we need God, because naturally it's going to go to that side. If I do it in my strength, it's definitely going there. But if I put my trust in the Lord, He will guide me towards that direction.
Leon, I love it. I fear that I've gone into the shade as we've been talking.
Well,
anyway,
it's all good.
It's all good.
It's all good.
I want to thank you, honestly, so much, because I said this some people recently, but the reality is that most of our church was white at one point, and not only today, but many times you said let's do this. You've been a pioneer for the racial integration of the kingdom that you see and that you want to, and that is a really beautiful thing, and it's a brave thing, and it's a great thing, because you choose to act and take risks. You make yourself vulnerable for the sake of Jesus, out of love for him, for the sake of his church. So I honour you for that, and I think, you know, I want to stand with you and say, come on, let's keep walking this road together. I know that's your heart, it's my heart. I think God can do immeasurably more than we could ever ask or imagine if people do as you've been doing, to kind of come, here I am, Lord, with humility, but I don't want to let this drop. I want to see something change. And that's true in any sector of life, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I
Thanks,
commend
Tom.
you, grateful for you.
Likewise,
I'll give you a hug,
Tom.
but we're not allowed because it's
I
locked
know,
down.
it's a virtuals. Yeah, about Tom as well. I mean, it's our relationship is mutual. It's mutual trust, mutual respect, and you know, we're talking about you basically with Freddie, but you've also got under me, Tom. Like, there's things that I've brought to you, and you might not have been sure, but you've basically like served me, and you've kind of got under me, and you're like, okay. Even in terms of anger, you know, I've spoken to you about anger, and there's labels about, you know, like particularly like black women. You know, I've spoken to you about these things, and you're like, Leon, talk, do it, speak.
Yeah.
So you've got under me. So it's mutual, and as you said, the relationship will continue, and yes.
I was fishing for that when I complimented you. It was really just I wanted
He's
you to
looking for
compliment me back,
well,
so
I mean, it's
I caught it.
It's it. Iron sharpens iron. That's it. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you so much. So that's it.
Cool.
All right.